Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm doing a special interview with my mate Leigh Norris. Now Leigh is a serving police officer, so we're not going to discuss anything to do with the police, but he's going to run an extreme marathon. And when I say extreme, I break into sweat just thinking about it. Leigh, thanks so much for coming in today. 26 years in the police?
Just over, yep.
And currently a chief inspector with Essex Police, working with a great team of people, Vernal Scott, Sean Taylor, fantastic set of people and people that I've worked with previously. But what was your inspiration to take up, because you've always been fit, what is your inspiration to undertake this ridiculous challenge?
So thank you. Thanks very much for your time today anyway. I've been into fitness really, if I'm honest, or trying to look after myself really. I think probably from late teens. I lost my dad when I was really young. I was 12. He was sort of late 30s. So I suppose trying to be as healthy as possible has been something that's been important to me for much of my life. But I've done, I think I'm on about 11 Ironman triathlons now, either full distance or sort of half distance, loads of marathons. And this was like, I suppose, to use a term on a bucket list, as it were, to try and complete before I get too much older and maybe, start picking up more injuries and so on. But I tried last year. I suppose the crux of the answer is I tried this last year and failed. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I got to pretty much the end of day 2 out of 6 days of competition, as it were. I got stuck in got caught up in a really big sandstorm, sort of 100 kilometre an hour winds for about 8 hours. Probably lost my bottle a bit, if I'm being really honest, but also then started having breathing difficulties. I'm asthmatic as well, so if I get a cold or anything and it goes to my chest, I do suffer with it. And as it was, I came back from Morocco, mentally I think in a bit of a bad place. I know it's a first world problem type thing, but you know what I mean. I was just really down, but I think in hindsight it was the right thing to do. If I'd have been that unwell as I was in Essex, when I got back, as I would have been out there in Morocco, 6 hours from the nearest town of some sort, it probably wouldn't have been, a sensible thing. And if I'm honest, I had, when I was making that decision, I had a bit of an epiphany. I think it was a case of, no, hang on, I've got responsibilities outside of this. I can do this another day maybe. And it was a case of, an opportunity arose again through Scope, the charity, to actually go back again. And I thought I didn't want to get too much older and look back and think, do you know what? I wish I'd have done that. I didn't want to have a regret about it. So I really want to just give it my absolute best.
So what does training look like for you then, Lee?
At the moment, probably not as much as it should be. Right. So I learned a lot from last year, from failure last year, and
unsuccessul, not failure.
Oh, here we go. You've been unsuccessful.
You've been unsuccessful.
Yeah, okay. All right. From being unsuccessful, just around things like kit, clothing, food, and a few other bits and pieces, but certainly around training. Whereas the terrain. So I know now what to expect in terms of the terrain, what it looks like. And don't get me wrong, the route changes year on year, but I know when I get out there, roughly what the temperature is going to be. I know that it's going to be really cold at night, so I'm better prepared for that. But training really is a mixture of running and hiking, and and doing both with a rucksack on. That's got things in that I'll be taking out to the desert. And like this Sunday, I've got an event which is called the St. Peter's Way. So it's a long distance race between Ongar and Bradwell-on-Sea. which is 43 miles.
Wow.
So I did that last year. So I'll be doing that with a rucksack on, and I'll be using walking poles, which, you know, in hindsight I should have taken last year but didn't. So, I mean, the thing is, I train probably most days anyway to some degree. So my base level fitness is really good, but what I need to do differently this year, I think, is more around, I think around mindset. I think around making sure I keep myself probably a bit quarantined away in the week or so leading up to the event, because I went out there with a bit of illness. It sounds like a list of excuses, doesn't it? But especially around kit, I think that's the big learning point for me, really.
And I know, you know, we worked together some time ago, and I know the impact of losing your dad and how important it is to maintain your fitness, etc., and how hard you work to do this, because like you say, you've done triathlons, you've done the extreme bike rides, Dunwich Dynamo and all the other stuff that you've done. This has got to be up there though when it comes to events.
No, it absolutely is. And I think, as I said, it's just one of these things I've thought about doing for a long while. Thought maybe it was just a bit beyond me, but I got to a point, I suppose last year, maybe the end of 21, of thinking, right, I've done, you know, 3 long distance Ironman triathlons. I think it's 8 half distance now. You know, numerous other events, and it's like what I believe in is trying to push myself. You know, we're only here for, you know, one life. I genuinely believe now. Probably my mindset has changed over the last few years because of other things, and actually having things to be able to look back on and be proud of. You know, obviously I talked to you before about my involvement with parkrun events, and just I believe in legacy. I believe in community stuff and volunteering and all that sort of thing which I know this is not that, but I like looking back and thinking, do you know what, I'm glad I did that.
But that's the police officer in you, mate, because I tell you now, I've been retired 6 years. I still believe in community. I still believe in the sanctity of Essex Police. I moan about it like everybody else does, but I'm still really passionate about it, and I'm passionate about my friends doing well, both in the job and out of the job. And, you know, and I will always try and, I'll be a critic like everyone else, but I will always try and champion their cause. When you arrive in Morocco, what's that like? What's the atmosphere like?
Well, it starts, I mean, everyone who's travelling from Britain meets on the Friday morning. So Friday the 20th, for this year, it's a month later than last year. So Friday the 21st of April, and you get a few hundred people turn up at Gatwick at, you know, some stupid hour in the morning to board a charter flight to a place called Ouarzazate, which is on the edge of the Moroccan Sahara. So the atmosphere there is really good. You've got a lot of like-minded people. There'll be, you know, newbies. There'll be people that have done it numerous times. So you start there, and then I don't know what it was, about 3.5 hour flight, I think, to Morocco. And the first thing, obviously, you notice is the heat. And as I said, you know, we're a month later now, so who knows, you know, what that temperature will be like. But yeah, the atmosphere is good. You know, there's a certain amount of trepidation, I think, with most people, but and then once you've got a long coach ride then to base camp on day one, as it were, or just before the event. And then you get in with your tent mates, and I know roughly who I'm with in a tent now, and a couple of the people were unsuccessful. There you go, I've used the word, last year as well. So we're joining up again this year.
Brilliant.
So I think there's that, you know, common place, as it were, common ground. And you have a couple of days there to sort of a bit of acclimatisation. You know, you've got the local Bedouin, sort of Moroccan Bedouin tribes people that are there, and they, you know, I mean, logistically, it's amazing, you know, to have 1,400 people to feed them all, and some of the food is amazing beforehand. And then on Sunday, you know, that's the start of the race, and from then on, for the next 6 days, you are self-sufficient with all your food and water. So you start on the 23rd? Yep, Sunday the 23rd. St George's Day, how apt! There you go. So it's tradition. They always seem to start with an AC/DC song, "Highway to Hell." That starts off day one, which is all a bit surreal. You know, I've got really good memories of last year. 13 or so 100 people there at the start. You know, a guy called Patrick Bauer who started the event 37 years ago. It's been going a long while. And that's it. You're off. You know, day one is normally about 20 or so miles to sort of get you into it. checkpoints at every 10K. You get water at every checkpoint. You have to take salt tablets regularly. So it's a day at a time for me. It's like a hurdles race. It'll be a day at a time. Day 4 is always the long stage of about 50 miles. And you've got to take your food has got to be a minimum of 2,000 calories per day. But for someone like me who's 90 something kilos in weight, and I'm quite a heavy sweater when I walk or run, so I've just I've got to be really careful with what I eat and drink. I know what works for me, and I think I've built that knowledge up over the years of endurance sports. I'm built for comfort. Let's put it that way. built for comfort, not for speed, sort of thing.
You can't eat too much of that Kendall mint cake.
No, I love it. It's great. It's good.
The way you're describing it is the fact that it is a race. It's an individual race, but it's a team. It sounds ridiculous, but no, it's a team. You want everybody to get through and get through safely, because it can't be underestimated the dangers of the coldness at night. No. And the fact that you could overheat or get hypothermia because you are in the Sahara Desert at the end of the day.
So it's that's what surprised me last year, I suppose, is the real extremes of temperature. So I think the maximum we had during the day was recorded around about 43 centigrade and down to sort of 1 and 2 at night.
Wow.
And I've never been so cold, almost shivering, like convulsing. But then, stupidly, I didn't really test my sleeping bag in advance. It wasn't appropriate for me,
Do you have to carry that?
Yeah. So,
you carry everything with you?
So my pack weighed, you get your pack weighed the day before, and obviously the lighter the better, I suppose. But so my pack weighed on day 1 about 11.5 kilos, but that includes water. So obviously, it was fairly heavy. And then obviously as you go through the days, you get to, hopefully this year, you get to the end of the event and your pack, in theory, will have very little in it. But a lot of your food is sort of dehydrated, freeze-dried type stuff that you add water to. But I took things like, beef jerky or biltong and mixed nuts and seeds and things like that, and, high carb bars, but stuff, to be honest with you, stuff I've been used to using for long distance triathlon. So I know what works for me. And drinking water for me is not a problem. I drink probably too much, if I'm honest. But, so there's things, I suppose, that I had knowledge of. I knew what worked for me, but it was, I suppose, what I didn't prepare for as much as I maybe could have done. But now I'll go out there more prepared, is around things like sleeping bag, around not drinking coffee too late because it just kept me awake, and a few other bits and pieces to do with kit, really, if I'm honest. So I think I'll go out there this year knowing what to expect more. So last year was a dry run. There we go.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Do you get provided with anything whilst you're on?
Just water.
Just water.
Yeah, so water bottles at every checkpoint. They're all numbered up. Any littering is instant disqualification. But yeah, that's it. For the 6 or 6.5 days of competition, you are completely self-sufficient. But what you find is you end up probably having too much, but I think it's always better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah,
and people donate and share food and kit, and there's really good camaraderie around the camp. Certainly the couple of days before, everyone's eating sort of locally prepared food, and there's a big bonfire, and I think a bit surreal, but on about day 3, I think there's normally an orchestra that turns up, and so you're in the middle of nowhere, but
they've come in.
They've come in, yeah. So, but I didn't experience that last year. So this year's going to be different. I'm going to be positive about it.
And you're doing your park runs every week as part of it?
Yeah, pretty much every week. Yeah, I do. I love the concept of park run. I wish it was something that I invented. But so what was it now? 9 years ago, I set up Brentwood Park Run. I was the event director there for about 5 years. Sort of conceived the idea of Brentwood Juniors for kids on a Sunday. I really believe in it, and I really believe in volunteering as well. I've done volunteering for, I'd say, God, certainly most of my adult life in one form or another. But I suppose the concept of volunteering at Park Run is so important, and without volunteers, they just don't go ahead. But then that's I did volunteering at Chelmsford City for about a year, and again, absolutely invaluable to how games operate, and help out my lad's school with his running, his cross country team, football referee, and all sorts. I genuinely believe in it, and I try and get him to get in that mindset as well.
Yeah, good for you. Well, that's what we need, because policing, and I've said this before, the community are the police, and the police are the community, and unless we've got a community spirit, then actually things will never take place. If we just keep walking past everything.
But yeah, be an upstander, not a bystander sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I do believe in that.
Yeah, I do, mate, and that's what's drilled into us. I'm really grateful for your time today, and I appreciate this is only a very short podcast. And the fact is that when you retire, mate, we'll have a proper debrief and see how you're getting on. But before we go, I have to ask you: have you got anything you'd like to add, alter, or correct?
No, I suppose I just add trying to fundraise for Scope Disability Charity, and I suppose my only real connection, this is very tenuous, very creative, don't get me wrong, is nearly 5 years ago I broke my foot really badly jumping off a wall, and I was, I suppose, incapacitated for probably about 5-6 months, and then sort of started getting back into things. So it was, don't get me wrong, only a temporary thing, but it just made me realise how much I take for granted, or I have taken for granted. I try and if I'm honest, that and a few other things in life probably have changed my outlook on things. I try and take things less for granted now, because you just never know what's around the corner, which sounds a bit corny maybe, but so yeah, I'm trying to fundraise for Scope Disability Charity, and so yeah. This is, and they're one of the only few UK charities that are involved with the marathon. Oh yeah. So it's something I really believe in. If I can do what I can to help them.
Oh, good for you. I mean, and Scope do such a fantastic job, and charities are really up against it at the moment. And fundraising is a big thing, and but unless people fundraise, certain services do not take place. No, so we're going to put all your GoFundMe and all your other stuff, we're going to put that into this, along with any other social media stuff that you want to include. So part of your preparation, Leigh, is about media support, and you've had some great support previously, but what's actually taking place with that?
So last year, in the advance of the event last year, I was on BBC Essex. That was with Matt Mackay. Yep. And I've dealt with Matt before. We've done stuff before on the radio, and that was really, really helpful. And with Debbie Tubby on BBC Look East as well, and I think they want to cover it again this year. I'm hoping they do. I don't know if there's a bit of a story there maybe about wanting to actually put myself through it again, but no, things like that are they're and just to sort of, I suppose, add to that is our police media team have kindly did quite a bit on Facebook last year, and that got a lot of reach. So all these things are massively helpful, just to sort of, if nothing else, just to sort of say, look, this is what he's doing. This is who he's trying to raise some money for, and if some good comes of it, then so be it. Yeah, fantastic. And I hope that Andy Proffitt's going to be there with your pajamas all wrapped up to see you off on the plane. I don't think you will be, Andy, will you? But the what's the response like from the job? It's been really positive. I mean, I'm still going to be. I've yet to do it, but for this year, a little bit of sort of internal comms. There's some posters up around every sort of main police station, with a link to my Just Giving page. And in fact, the Nisa shop just around the corner from headquarters, we've had a collection box in there, for a few months now, and that's been really good. That's been really productive, and loads of people have commented on it. And even random people who, don't even work for the police have mentioned, I've seen your collection box in the shop. Fantastic. And so yeah, they've been, and I have to say, Nisa, have been really, really good with fundraising and sort of donations, and there's a number of other businesses as well. Adventure Island have. Good old Adventure Island. There's been a few. Good old Millers. Thank you so much today, Leigh. I wish you all the very best, and keep safe out there, and let us know how you get on. Thank you, Paul. Thanks very much for your time. Cheers, man. Thank you.